On the Wall is brought to you by Milton and King, the trusted partner for exquisitely crafted luxury wall coverings. Milton and King's trade program is designed to make your creative process seamless, providing special trade-only benefits including complimentary sampling, early access to new collections, and exclusive pricing structured to enhance your business success. To assist with your projects, you'll have the flexibility to curate your own custom swatchbook, tailored specifically to your design needs. With dedicated customer support every step of the way, our trade program is here to elevate your design vision and simplify your journey from inspiration to installation. Ready to join a partner who understands your craft? Visit miltonandking.com to apply for your trade account today. Milton and King, your vision, our craftsmanship. Welcome to Milton and King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. Today we speak with Hollie Deese, the owner and publisher of Nashville Interiors Magazine. If you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and review. Hollie.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
Doing well. You ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Awesome. I wanted to just to sort of, I guess, preface this for the listeners. You are the owner and publisher at Nashville Interiors.
That's correct. Yes.
And I'd love to sort of, and we met at a trade show here in Nashville.
Yes, Design Edge.
Yes, Design Edge, which was great. But I'd love to sort of dive into a little bit of your background and just everything Hollie.
Sure. So how I got to be where I'm at now.
Well, yes. Well, partly. So I know you're from Chicago, right? Or Chicago, Illinois.
Yes. Yes.
Are you from the city, like the city, or you're like in the suburbs?
So I grew up in the northwest suburbs and went to Catholic school, like most people did in the Midwest. And I moved to the city when I was 17 when I started college, and lived in Chicago for a while. And then,
what school was that?
I started at DePaul University, and then after a year, I transferred to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Okay. And I was in Wisconsin for a couple of years. And
how's that?
It's kind of a party school, and I was not used to being at such a large university, being at small schools growing up, and then a small college my first year. So I just didn't really excel, and I didn't enjoy it. So I moved back to Chicago and went to Columbia for journalism. And that's where I think my path really started,
Now, what came first? Was it the journalism or the love of interiors, or was it sort of hand in hand?
It was definitely journalism. So I really and I always magazines. So I, growing up, just was obsessed with magazines. And when I went to Columbia, my major was magazine journalism. So specifically focused on writing for magazines. And I really what really got me on that path was I really loved Gourmet Magazine. And there was a column in there that was written by a couple, Jan and Michael Stern. It was called Road Food. And every issue they would drive around the country and just like eat at places that you would find on the road, like barbecue stands or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, what an amazing job that would be. Just seeing the country, getting to know people, like where they live. And so that was really kind of what motivated me. I'd always been a writer, but journalism seemed like a safer course in writing as opposed to creative writing. It just seemed like more controlled and less scary to put yourself out there. So that was really the motivation. So
did you have did you have a creative writing interest as you're younger, like even in high school? Or did you?
I did actually.
Were you like a story writer, or?
Yeah, I had a really great. I've always been a reader, and when I was a kid, I did like a neighborhood newspaper and stuff. So I was always like kind of playing around with writing.
Oh, that's cool.
And when I got into college, actually, I got creative writing scholarships. That was how I was able to afford college was these scholarships for creative writing. But once
Oh,
I got
wow.
into college, I got nervous about my skill set. Like you kind of start to doubt yourself. And
Why do you think that was? Was it because there
um
were other students and you're kind of comparing yourself,
yeah, I
or?
think so. And I think when you're like 17 and, all of a sudden you're doing what you want to do, I don't know. Creative writing to me was just so like personal, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're really putting yourself out there. I felt like to be judged and critiqued, and I just kind of backed off a little bit. And but yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, it was for the right reasons because I've really embraced journalism. So, and that was really my background leading up to having Nashville Interiors. So, uh, once I was in school and I was interning at magazines and things like that, that's when I really started gravitating toward like design and things like that.
So, what is specifically different about when you're going to school and you focus on magazine journalism as opposed to, I guess, general journalism? What is the real difference?
I it really there isn't that much difference. I mean, I had to take all the same courses that anyone would in journalism, like news writing, broadcast, layouts. Like they make you kind of take every kind of course because the mindset was if you're going into journalism, it's kind of a chaotic career. There's layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You may be doing jobs that you wouldn't typically do. So they kind of wanted to prepare you for every aspect of being in media.
Gotcha.
And so, that was just really, but the focus, what like, so my internships is really where I kind of got to like really focus on magazines.
Mm-hmm. Is that so? That's how you sort of got into that industry, is through interning.
Yes. And I mean, I still talk to some of those editors today, like 25 years later. Like it really um, just reinforced my belief in that I was on the right path.
Are they still editors?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Some of them, like one woman I worked with at a magazine, she's an editor at a different magazine in Chicago, and you just kind of you never know where your career is going to take you. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. A lot of people who are in print media stay in print media. They really that's their passion, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially magazines. I think once you're in it, you're just you love it, so you stay in it.
Yeah. I mean, I always find it like, from someone that's on the outside, I find it a little bit scary just because everything's going so digital. It just makes you, a lot, obviously print, the world of print is kind of turned upside down at the moment. I mean, it's been happening for a while.
Hmm.
But obviously that's not something you would have foreseen back when you were going to university. I would imagine there
Well,
wasn't.
actually, it's funny. When I started journalism school, it was literally like a few weeks after 9/11.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it was a kind of a chaotic time for media in general. That was kind of like the rise of, 24-hour news cycle and all that. But our teachers were all in the field, and there was this very much like you're probably going to go through layoffs. Like people told us from the beginning, like Prince dying, that was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of what was out there. But I always kind of laugh about that because I've only ever been in print media since journalism school, and I've
Mm-hmm.
obviously been successful. I've gone through layoffs, of course. I've been, in the newspaper industry, and I've, experience. I mean, there's magazines right now that are laying off people, and so I think, if you are the safety for me is working for myself
Mm-hmm.
and not being part of a larger media company where you don't have control over spending or what's happening in the industry. Like with Nashville Interiors, we're so focused on local that we can kind of pivot as needed without going out of business.
Yeah, I always think about that. I mean, even when it comes to outside publishing, like if you're working for these, huge corporations, huge conglomerates, whether it's like Amazon or whatever, and then every once in a while you just hear 50,000 people laid off, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like the scale of something that's when it's that big, and they make, some slight cut to some portion of their, budget, and it's just, and basically what that means is like thousands of jobs at one time
Oh my gosh,
are
yeah.
gone. And so
Yeah.
I imagine when you're working for, a huge publishing company where there's, hundreds of employees, or I don't even know if there's thousands, but that you'd, the same sort of thing would apply where, slight changes in budget or focus or something can mean, it's volatile for the person who's got
Oh yeah.
no
I mean,
control.
when I moved to Nashville in 2003, it was to work for a magazine department at the Tennessean. So they're a newspaper, but they were kind of launching this special publications division. And I left Chicago to come take that job, and our whole department got laid off 3 months later
Oh, wow.
because they only gave it that amount of time to make money. And it was kind of like, what? You didn't even give it a chance. But that's kind of what happens in those bigger media companies. And so that's when I pivoted to news writing and was with the newspaper for years. And then left again during like rounds of layoffs in 2007. So yeah, it's just a different kind of mindset. You're kind of just part of this bigger cog, that you just
Yeah.
don't have control over. But
Did you
you
have any
know,
idea when you were making that move that it was like may or may not work out, or
oh,
was that just a mindset you have in the publishing world anyway?
I
Or
it was like my first real job, so like I had no idea. Like I didn't even consider that I would get laid off because it just was like I'd never gone through that, and I was pretty young. I mean, I was well, and actually, so when I was in Chicago, I was at Chicago Magazine,
Mhm.
and I was an intern transitioning to a staff position. And while that was happening, the company got bought out by the Tribune company, and then they put a freeze on hiring. And
Mhm.
so that was my first experience. It was like all of a sudden this job I thought I was going to have was not going to come to fruition. And so then I put my resume out, and that's when the Tennessean hired me. And so yeah, it was basically like a series of layoffs or whatever got me to where, it's just, you just kind of keep moving forward. So that's what got me to Nashville. And then once I was here, I was kind of like, well, let me see if I can make this work within the company.
When you were making the transition, I guess, from journalism student to getting, an intern, and kind of being in the publishing world, was there anything that you thought that I guess you didn't feel prepared for in terms of like, you know, you'd want to go back
Um,
to your journalism school and be like, hey, maybe you should teach this.
uh, Taxes. No, I think honestly, when you're young, like, and you're just getting out of college, you really have the confidence of ignorance almost. Like, you have no idea, what's out there. So you just kind of go for it, and you have that luxury being young with no you don't have a family yet, you don't really understand like what could happen. And so yeah,
Hmm.
I think I didn't really I didn't know what I didn't know. It was just kind of
Yeah.
learning along the way. So
Was there anything that surprised you about the industry that, I mean, that you can remember now, sort of like when you had,
um
fresh eyes and ears and you were going into it, that you were just like, oh, I didn't know it was like this? Or was it sort of
I
what you
think
expected?
really you kind of I one of the things I did experience, like the newsroom is a real I never expected to be in a newspaper newsroom. And so once I was in that environment, that was, I definitely felt the pressure to be as good as the people around me. Like there's a level of professionalism, and um, you just really, it was kind of like a male dominated industry as well. And so that was
Hmm.
something new to me being in like a corporate environment, a newsroom that, you started to kind of feel like, oh, I need to prove myself a little more almost.
Hmm. You feel it was more competitive.
Yeah, definitely. And when there's always layoffs going on, there is this attitude like you've got to be the best, and there's someone else behind you who's going to want to take this job if you can't hack it and things like that. So
Hmm. When you made because you moved to Nashville for that Tennessean job, right? That's what you said.
yes.
So when and that was only, so you move, and it's only 3 months in, and then that falls through. Was there the thought of like, oh, I'm going to go back to Chicago?
Oh, 100%. I actually was going to go back to Chicago, but I met my now ex-husband at that job. So we had just
Uh,
started dating a week before layoffs.
hmm.
And I'd said to him, I'm going back to Chicago. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't working out. And he was like, I really think, we've got something. So why don't you stick around? And, I was 23, 24. I was like, yeah, for sure. I'll stick around. And then, pretty quickly found a job within I got a job working at a local newspaper in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that was within the Tennessean Corporation.
Hmm.
So I started doing the page layout, which I had learned in college. I never thought I'd be doing page layout, but that was the job that was available. And once I got into that job, I was like, hey, you know what? I actually can write too. And they're like, oh, thank God, so they had me doing all kinds of things. So I was doing page layout and
And
writing and just
is page layout basically like almost like working in Photoshop? Like you're just literally
design, yeah, like
placing.
laying out the actual newspaper pages,
Hmm.
which I literally had to Google how to do because I did not do good in that class in college.
Hmm.
And it's not my skill set, but it was what I needed. That was the job that was available for me to be able to like keep my health insurance and it was in the news industry. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So
It's like an interesting form of Tetris, isn't it?
yes, definitely. Oh my gosh, that's a great way to put
With
it.
word, with just with words and images.
Yes, yes. So, and I got pretty, it's just kind of very formulaic. I was okay at it, but I was never a designer. I was never going to
Hmm.
create like award-winning newspaper pages. So,
Yeah. So as you mentioned, like publishing, sort of the love of publishing came first before interiors, and you were turned on by
yeah.
that person you said that was like going on basically writing about their food experiences where they go and stuff. So when did sort of the love of interiors? How did that develop? Or
So,
yeah.
I bounced around within the Tennessean doing different things. So from that job in Murfreesboro, I was there for maybe 18 months. And then a job opened up back at the Tennessean. They had a young reader publication called All the Rage, which was kind of like an alternative weekly writing about bars and food and people's homes, things like that, just kind of like cultural stuff.
Hmm.
So I got that job, and my first article for them was writing about the new people living downtown. So, Nashville in 2003, downtown Nashville, you were not allowed to build residential down there. It was a business district. And so the rules had just kind of started changing where people were building downtown and living downtown, which is so different from what we have now. But I was here for that transition. So that was like my first article and just kind of getting to know like how Nashville was developing. And so that was really my first experience with that. And then after a while, I transitioned from that job to a lifestyle reporter for the paper. And my beat was home and style. And so that was really covering, Nashville architecture, how people live, design. And I really was drawn to that because I don't know, it was this combination of how people live, like it's like very a personal thing, but also
Hmm.
embracing that beauty or quirkiness or art collections. Like everyone's home is so personal, but it just was really kind of, I was drawn to that.
Hmm. But there was, when you were in Chicago, it was also Interiors magazines, wasn't it? It was a
It was, I actually wrote about food mainly when I was in
okay.
Chicago. So, and when I first moved here, I wrote about food a little bit, but
Because I
yeah,
read
it
that you
was,
were you were working for Modern Luxury, wasn't that
I
right?
was. So Modern Luxury was my first, internship, but that job was, I mean, I was transcribing interviews, I was picking up items for photo shoots.
Hmm.
So going
So you
to
weren't involved in the
events.
curation at all of the
Oh, I was
content.
just, I mean, I did whatever they told me to do. I was just a lackey, you know?
Uh-huh.
But it was definitely, it was kind of, since it was like a lifestyle publication, I really kind of did everything. So yeah, interiors
Hmm.
was part of it, but it was just, a small part of what, I was tasked to do, I guess.
Okay, so it wasn't until you were really down here and you started covering these things that all of a sudden your was it your interest that got piqued? Like, did you have an interest before, or or was it just sort of like, was it a new thing for you and you were sort of like learning as you were covering it?
It was kind of a new thing for me. Like, I remember actually, and I just ran into this editor a couple weeks ago, my editor at the Tennessean. And when I had that beat, the Home and Style, we would drive around Nashville to different neighborhoods, and she would kind of talk with me about the architecture, like this neighborhood's known for this neighborhood's
Mm-hmm.
known for this. And it really opened my eyes to all the different ways people live in Nashville and why neighborhoods were developed a certain way or what like that Nashville look was, and it's different in every neighborhood. So
Hmm.
that's where that appreciation really started, I think.
Yeah. Well, I've only been in Nashville for about 8 weeks or something like that, and I'm still sort of learning all the different areas and stuff. So you would say that each sort of like, if you're in Franklin or which is south of Nashville,
Hmm.
or I don't know, name another place, like you
Like
actually
12
see,
South or Belmont
like you
or
you notice
Bordeaux. Yeah.
differences in terms of
Oh yeah. I mean, the style of architecture, which I really appreciate because, like in Chicago, there's like Chicago bungalows. There's like a very specific look of the
mhm.
homes there. And that's kind of true of like a lot of different regions. There's just, I don't know, maybe it's the neighborhood developer who comes up with it, but
Yeah, I was
like
wondering, like, how does that
Bordeaux,
develop? Like, how does that get to be that way?
it's so interesting. I think it's really, like it really falls a lot on the developers, and what kind of neighborhoods they're building, what their style is.
Hmm.
Like Bordeaux in Nashville, there's a ton of mid-century modern homes, and that look different than other neighborhoods. Or if you're in Madison, there's like these like the ranch homes. I mean, there's so many ranches around here, and Madison, that developer was kind of the same developer that developed, an area in Belle Meade. And so it's like really very interesting to, just be like, oh, that's why this is.
Hmm. Is there like an area of whether it's interiors or architecture that you find yourself gravitating towards? Because I would imagine, like, as you're covering this stuff, you're sort of um, discovering your own kind of personal likes and dislikes and things that your eyes are drawn to and places that you feel comfortable. Is there something that is there a style or something like that speaks to you personally that you kind of
Uh,
have a personal favoritism towards?
it's interesting. I love the downtown high rises that have been coming up. And I think that's obviously because of my time in Chicago.
Hmm.
But because it's such a new lifestyle here in Nashville, I mean, literally within the last 20 years, I mean, it's crazy to think people were not living downtown. But, a lot of people, that's like their first experience living in a city, right? They're young, they move to a downtown area in a city. And
Hmm.
so I love that kind of knowing that there's so many people moving to Nashville and that's their first experience is living downtown when so many people who are from here have never had that experience.
Hmm.
So I love that aspect. I love, um, obviously, mid-century modern. I love the traditional homes too, and I love that juxtaposition. Being Nashville, it's such a creative community. There's artists here, there's musicians, and sure, they bought a traditional home, but you walk in and maybe there's like this subversive art collection, or they have incredible furniture that maybe doesn't quite match the style of the home, but everyone kind of makes it their own, which I just think is amazing. So
I would imagine that's kind of a really cool aspect of your job, is that in covering interiors, you're sort of getting a peek. Like, you can drive around all day and be like, oh, I wonder what that house is like on the inside. And since you're covering this stuff, you're actually getting that peek, behind the curtain,
yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah, and it's so funny. One time I was dropping magazines off at a retailer, and the woman was looking through it and she's like, oh my god, we had a home featured, and she's like, I have driven by this house every day and wondered what it looked like inside. And that really kind of struck with me that other people feel that they maybe connect with a home that they drive by or see being built, and they're so curious about how those people live, what their stuff looks like. And so
Hmm.
we're able to share that with them. And I think that's important for people to see how other people live. It's like it's such a personal thing,
Hmm.
but I think it makes us all feel like it's okay for us to have our homes be that way too.
On the Wall is brought to you by Milton and King, the trusted partner for exquisitely crafted luxury wall coverings. Milton and King's trade program is designed to make your creative process seamless, providing special trade-only benefits including complimentary sampling, early access to new collections, and exclusive pricing structured to enhance your business success. To assist with your projects, you'll have the flexibility to curate your own custom swatch book, tailored specifically to your design needs. With dedicated customer support every step of the way, our trade program is here to elevate your design vision and simplify your journey from inspiration to installation. Ready to join a partner who understands your craft? Visit miltonandking.com to apply for your trade account today. Milton and King, your vision, our craftsmanship. Well, let's get a little bit into actual Nashville Interiors. So that's your publication.
Yes.
And how did you become? Because you're the like a co-owner, aren't you? Or you're a
I'm
full
the
owner? Or,
owner.
oh, you're the owner.
So Nashville Interiors was founded by a woman named Kelly McGill in the year 2000. So next year is our 25th anniversary. So Kelly published Nashville Interiors once a year, and she sold it on newsstands. And it was really more of like a resource guide. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is where I would go to get flooring. This is where I would go to get lighting. And when I left the Tennessean in 2007 to have kids and just not be in that chaos of layoffs,
Mm-hmm.
I started to build a freelance writing career. So I kind of, for the next 10 years from 2007 to 2017, I wrote for a number of publications, magazines, newspapers all across the country. And Nashville Interiors locally became one of my clients.
Mm.
So I, and maybe this was, 2013, I started writing for them. And I just kind of, when I was writing for them, I was like, oh my gosh, if I had this magazine, I could do something with it. Like, it just, the content, everything about it, I was like, I would love to have Nashville Interiors and make it something more frequent, showcase more homes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had this kind of idea, but never really thinking, oh, I'm going to own Nashville Interiors. So
Right.
that owner sold it in 2016 to someone who had never had experience in magazines. And she did one issue and decided, this is not for me. And so
Mm.
she was going to just fold the magazine. And the sales director at the time, Pam Harper, who is still with me, love her dearly, she said, hey, I know someone who might want the magazine. And so she emailed me, it was like a Friday, and was like, hey, this is happening, do you want me, what do you think? And I was like, well, let me think about it. I did not even really need to think about it. I mean, later that night I was like, yes, I want it. So I took over Nashville Interiors for the cost of the legal transfer, just whatever, to transfer everything to my name,
Mm-hmm.
which was like $1,000. And all of a sudden I had a magazine, and it was what I'd always wanted, but now what?
Yeah.
So that was 2017. And I knew immediately I wanted it to be free so that people could pick it up, see the ads, read the content. And I knew I wanted it to be quarterly. And so I started making moves. The first year I did 2 issues. I set up all the distribution points, just went to every location, like, hey, can we leave our magazine here for people to take? And I mean, pretty much everyone said yes. It's a beautiful magazine, free, it was free. It was something additional they could give to their clients.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just kind of built it that way. So that
Has there
was,
been has there been much of a difference between what it is now and what it was when you first discovered it?
so yeah, I think it is pretty different. So I definitely made it more consumer friendly, more beautiful photos of projects. It definitely, it's still like a resource guide, but I think from when I took it over to now, it has become more, it really is partly a consumer magazine and partly to trade. So many people that pick up the magazine are in the design industry and they want to see what other people are doing. It's become more of a, it's become more than the magazine, honestly. It's become like a networking group. Like, I really have grown to love all of the people in the design community here, the makers, the artists. These are things that we've kind of included over the years, where it's not just focused on resources, but it's on all aspects of what goes into a home and how people live.
Hmm.
And being able to connect the people in the design industry with consumers, but also other people, it's just become, I don't know, it's like they're my family, and I really feel that. So
Now you're going from being a writer to or a journalist and all of a sudden owning a magazine. What I mean, what's involved in doing that? That I mean, I imagine there's all of a sudden you've got all like so much more responsibility. You're not just covering a story on, such and such home. Like all of a sudden you're having to worry about probably things that you had never even knew you had to worry about before.
yes, all the
Um,
things I did not prepare for in journalism school. So um setting up the distribution, organizing photo shoots, oh my gosh, going to the printer, dealing with press check, dealing with production, paying people, collecting invoices. I mean, it was really, it wasn't anything I didn't think I could handle. I just have always been that kind of person where it's like, well, I'll just figure it out and do it and
mhm,
make it happen. And so, yeah, definitely. But it is so much more. And it's hard because I enjoy writing, but I can't write everything. And I do a lot of the writing on the magazine still, but I've definitely tapped into my connections from the Tennessean and the other journalists that I loved working with and passing on a lot of that to them. But yeah, it's definitely been, we're working on our media kit right now, and, distribution numbers, circulation, readership, all of these things that I really need to be on top of, and then on top of the growth of like social media and digital
yeah.
issues. I mean, all of that stuff has been, um, it is so much more than, I mean, when I was I would just sit at my computer and do interviews on the phone and crank out the article and then on to the next.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I prefer doing the whole magazine. Like, I've always been someone who I want my days to be different every day. And that
Hmm.
definitely is the case now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a writer, there's a creative aspect to it, and as you're running a business, there's more of a, I guess, a logistical hat you have to put on.
Hmm.
That I would imagine you wouldn't really have much time to do the writing as much, but also you have to sort of be in a different headspace, I would think.
It's true. And it really is like the less you write, the harder it is, So,
It's like a muscle.
before I would be writing, I mean, honestly, I had so many different clients. I would, some, 5 to 10 articles a week for different people. And now it's like, I'm doing sales, I'm taking so many meetings, I'm, hiring. And so it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I've got 3 articles to write for the magazine and I'm doing it on deadline. I've done the
Hmm.
interviews, I've done all the prep work, but you can't just sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to write now. You really have to be in that headspace. You're absolutely right about that. So that's been difficult, but it's still, I'll get out when I'm starting, I'm like, oh, this is a good lead. I still feel that feeling I get when I know I'm writing a good article. And so
Hmm.
when that hits and clicks, then it's like, okay, I'm still there doing that. But yeah, it's definitely, every year is less and less. And even, I was still doing freelance writing for other people up until last year and a half. I was still writing, for different newspapers to supplement what I was doing with the magazine. But I had to make that transition where like my focus is completely on this business I'm building, because this is what is my future.
Yeah, and I would imagine that as Nashville's growing and growing and growing, there's just more opportunity for what you're doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The design industry in Nashville is, I mean, talk about growth of a city, but also in that area, we've got showrooms opening up. We've got the Belmont, bought the O'More interior design school. And so now we've got this great interior design architecture program here. So people are coming here to learn about design. It's just really, it's incredible to watch and be a part of because Nashville Interiors, I really do feel like with any print media, we're documenting a moment in time. Like I'll when I'm long gone, there's going to be print copies of this magazine out there that will show like how were we living in Nashville post pandemic, all of these things that really it's just kind of overwhelming sometimes to think about what we're in the middle of right now. But being able to like take that and piece it out into different different copies of the magazine makes it a little bit more palatable, but it's definitely a responsibility I take seriously.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, because the city is just growing so much, and I've only been here for a little bit, but I mean, there's obviously some resistance to it because a lot of places are sort of getting priced out. People that have been
Yes.
here for a while, whether it's I just remember watching the news the other day, and there was a pizza place that had been there for years and years and years, and it couldn't afford to be in the neighborhood that it was in anymore.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
really difficult to watch. And and I can understand that, I've been here 22 years and I've seen some big changes, but there were people here before me, who were upset when I was coming here, like, oh, Nashville's growing. And I think that is one of the main reasons why we focus on artists and makers in the magazine, because people people come to Nashville and they develop in Nashville and they build in Nashville because of our creative community. They are drawn to our artists and that whole kind of vibe. So if we're pricing those people out, we're going to lose that. And so I think it's really important that developers and designers use local artists, use local makers as a way to keep them here. If it can all work if we're all working together and understand that that's that common goal, that like Nashville is appealing to everybody because of the creatives, and we can't lose them. And so, but we can't, so pricing them out should not be an option, but it's a struggle for sure. So I'm just trying to do my small part in introducing those developers and builders to those creative people that can really enhance what they're doing. They don't have to go to other cities to find them. We've got them here, and let's employ them so that they don't want to leave.
right. There is a sense of that here that I've noticed, that I haven't really experienced in any other city that I've ever lived in. There is a sense of like, get it in Nashville. Like
Hmm.
Nashville has what you want. You don't need to go out. You don't, whether it's, I don't know, the shirt you buy or whatever it
Hmm.
is. Like a real sort of ethos, I
Yeah.
guess, that's, you know, buy local, from
Yep.
either whether it's your farmers markets that do really well here or whatever. So, and I definitely see, to the only a couple of events that I've been in the interiors world, you are really making a quite a big impact, I think, on really keeping people in interiors connected to each other. So I think that's really
Yeah, I think that's really has become what Nashville Interiors is in so many ways. Like, um, people can advertise in other publications, and I love that, especially if they're a local publication. We all are trying to support each other, but there's something about that, making connections within that community to kind of help it grow. And it makes sense, and it really, it's just so important to buy local. And I think that, like you were saying, there's so many people moving here from other areas, and people can get a little like, oh, we're full or whatever. I really love that we have so many people coming here from different parts of the country. It really only enhances what we've got. Like, it's building on this creativity that we have by bringing in new voices and, new senses of style, and really just, I don't know. I think that Nashville is special in that we can embrace all these different people and still retain what brought them here in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of, like setting up your magazine and figuring out sort of what the agenda is, how far, like in advance, like do you have an idea of what the fourth quarter magazine's going to be right now? Like, do you already have, like, for 2025, like how far in advance are you sort of covering these, the stories
Yeah.
and the projects that you're highlighting?
I do kind of have an idea. And actually, in 2025, we are going to 6 issues a year. So that's a
Oh,
big
wow.
jump for us. And so, as I'm working on the editorial calendar for the year, I kind of am looking at everything's kind of, like spokes off of like what are the major design events, so Antiques and Garden Show, that's the first issue of the year. We've got Nashville Design Week, we've got Parade of Homes. So I kind of slot those into those existing issues. And then um, next year we've got those issues, but then we're adding an arts issue and like a kitchen and bathroom issue. So kind of more themed issues. So
Hmm.
as people are pitching me things, I'm already thinking, all right, this will go in this issue. And I've got, a document where I'm slotting that stuff. But
Gotcha.
it really, but I try and really in every issue, how are, let's do a Franklin, let's do downtown living, let's do a renovation. Just trying to touch all of the ways that people are, building and designing. But there's always things that happen where I'm like, I'm going to bump this up or I'm going to move. So I have kind of a general idea,
Hmm.
but I don't until it's like done and done. Then it's okay. Because so many times I run out of room. I could do a magazine, I swear, every week if I had the bandwidth, and we would never run out of things to cover.
Wow.
But it's just just trying to make sure I touch all of those things and cover all those big design events.
So have there ever been times where you've had like a project kind of completed and you're like, but it doesn't really fit this quarter's theme.
Um,
Let me push
not
that to the next one.
not necessarily. Like, I don't typically have themes. It's just more like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, things will get bumped mainly just for space. Like I really
Hmm.
try and keep like ads and editorial. I don't want to have like way more ads than editorial or vice versa. I like to keep like a good like 60/40 or 50/50 ratio.
Hmm.
And then, if the ads are going over that, then I bump up page count, right? But that is expensive. So I have to be very sure that I can accommodate that. I have the content for editorial, but, you know, um, with a print piece, you can only bump up by like 8 or 16 pages. So it's a big decision to, all right, I'm going to add these pages. Can I, cover the cost? But yeah, it's really kind of when we're in production is really when things kind of click into place as like a final, okay, I've got this can move to the next issue. And one thing that we've added over the years, other than artists and makers, that we cover hospitality design. So restaurants and hotel design in Nashville has, I mean, it's some of the most beautiful stuff we have,
Hmm.
and it's become very important to the magazine, I think, to cover those things. So making sure I've got those in each issue, and it's just definitely like a balancing act.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like, now that, you're in this position and you own and you publish Nashville Interiors, does it ever sort of strike you that in some ways you've become like a gatekeeper?
You
In the sense
know,
that, like, because now you have the opportunity to, like, I'm sure you're, now that you're having to get writers that are writing for you because you don't have the time to do it, you're having the opportunity now to be like, oh, there's this writer from, that you've worked with, or this freelancer or whoever it is, and you now have the opportunity to highlight their work and be like, oh, this person's a great writer. I can see them, I can see their talents, or whether it's photographers that you're using
Yeah.
to shoot a project. Does that ever sort of strike you as being like, oh, I'm this person giving opportunities to,
Yeah,
other photographers
absolutely.
and writers and designers, in Nashville?
Yeah, that's something that's kind of crept up on me, but definitely that's one of like my greatest joys is being able to hire people that I respect their work, and being able to pay them is incredible, and then also give them this beautiful platform to showcase their work. And like a lot of my photographers, like if they want to, like I will refer them to, an architecture firm or design firm, like, hey, this person really gets your style. So, I know they're new or whatever, but, you know, being able to make those connections has been incredible. And more, I get comments from people who they're very like, you really helped me connect with this client, or you really helped me by doing this. And that's just, that's incredible to me. That's like something I never expected I would be a part of. Being that person who was the writer, and looking for, an advocate of me. Now I can be an advocate for other people. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that's got to be pretty fulfilling, I would think.
It is. It really, you know, I don't know what people think about magazines other than like they're pretty and, oh, it must be so much fun. Of course, those things, but there's so much work that goes into it, and there's so many people involved in every aspect of the production, from, the press guys at my printer, who they know my job, they know what I expect, they're so skilled at what they do, to like, the person delivering the magazines, which in a lot of times is me. But there's this whole process that happens, and just, respecting all that work is pretty incredible. And I don't think a lot of people understand all of that when they pick up a beautiful magazine. It's like, oh my gosh, you did such a great job. Well, it's not me. It is so many other people beside me that are able to contribute to that magazine looking that beautiful and in your hand, at the release event.
Yeah. Well, it is a beautiful magazine. I've been able to see two issues. One that was out already when I saw you at Design Edge,
Hmm.
and then the one that just got released. And they're both, like you said, they're gorgeous magazines, very well put together, and the projects are beautifully shot and displayed. Um, as we're running out of time, I did want to just, basically try to get you to. It's probably hard to do because you've covered so much, but is there a project that you had covered in a previous publication, or previous issue rather, that I'm not to say that you're not proud of all of them, but is there something that you would like to highlight in any sort of way, like maybe in the current issue? Maybe that's
Well,
the best way to do it. Is there something that you'd kind of
actually,
like to?
well, I love the current issue. It's actually one of my favorites. But when you were talking, something did stick out in my mind, and I think it's really indicative of Nashville and the growth and the incorporation of artists. There's a developer, Tony Giartana, who develop. He's like the big high-rise developer downtown, and he is actually the person who really got the codes changed to be able to build up in downtown Nashville. This is like 30 years
Hmm.
ago. And I've known him throughout the course of my journalism career. In 2008, there was a market crash, and, condos were kind of, struggling, and he was a part of that. But I remember this interview I did with him when I was at a newspaper, and he was the first person to use the word walkability to me in terms of neighborhoods. Like, he was trying to create like walkable neighborhoods.
Hmm.
And last year we had a feature. He built a high rise called Alcove. It's not his first high rise. He built the 505, which is another project we've covered that's amazing. But the Alcove was this incredible collaboration with his development team and local artists and local makers that really just showcases how well a developer can support artists and build something beautiful that also speaks to what Nashville is. So the project, the Alcove, they there was an artist, Mary Stengel Bentley, and they chose a piece of her artwork. Like, she's a fine artist, and they had New Hat Wallpaper and Textile Company look at this piece of art and translate it into like a tile mosaic that they then hired Red Rock Tile Works, a local tile company, to create the tiles. So it was like three different artists working together to create this tile piece that is like a column in the lobby of this building. And it's kind of like this real, just beautiful collaboration. And, you know, not to like go on and on, but the artist, Mary Stengel Bentley, her grandfather used to be a developer in downtown Nashville. He was really well known in like the 50s and 60s and just really incredibly respected. And he actually was a mentor of Tony's. And so it was really this full circle moment of like Nashville development artists all working together to create something that um, is beautiful and, you know, sustains, you know, our creativity. I just love that project. So
Yeah, and that's covered in the latest issue that's
it's
out
not in
now.
the latest issue. It was
Oh,
actually, we covered it last year.
oh, okay.
But yeah, it's definitely when you said a standout, that to me is something so crucial to kind of what we do in Nashville Interiors.
So if somebody wants to find that, what issue? Do you know what issue that is?
I believe it was. I mean, I could look, but it was probably summer of 2023.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy. I've got some.
Yeah. Well, because I noticed you have the back issues of the magazine also available online as well, right?
Yes, every issue that I have done since 2017 is online, and you can look through every article. That issue in particular, there's three women on the cover, and they're standing in front of the tile mosaic. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of like visually looking for it, that's the one I'm talking about.
What about finally something that's coming up in the next issue that that you're excited about?
So the next issue is our Antiques and Garden Show issue, and so that's one of our bigger, like, we sponsor that event. It's really kind of like, I always call it our Super Bowl. So I have actually, this doesn't typically happen. I have a lot of finished articles and projects that I'm trying to decide what goes into this issue. And there's one project in the Voce development, which the Voce development is that property belonged to Eddie Arnold, famous country musician and so well respected. And it was his personal property. His grandson, Shannon Pollard, is the developer of that project now. And what makes Voce so special is that they don't take down any trees. So it's like they build houses within the land as it is, and it's a very special development. So I
Hmm.
love that. So we're going to have that project feature, probably that designer is Brad Ramsey, and we are doing a feature on the Maxwell Gallery and Glass House, which is like a glass blowing studio, and everything in there is handmade. All the glassware is made there because there's a coffee shop there. So I'm excited about that. I don't know. I'm always excited to see like what finally makes it. And then, you know, so yeah, there's some cool stuff coming up for sure.
Awesome. And then when does that come out?
That will be coming out the very end of December, beginning of January. So it's out in time for the Antiques and Garden Show. And that'll be the first issue of the year where we're going 6. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a transition.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much. I've taken about an hour of your time,
I
and I know
It
you got a
went
lot to do.
fast.
But I appreciate you hopping on with me today and talking to me all about your background and what got you started and eventually brought you to Nashville Interiors, which is a great publication. So
Well,
thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. Absolutely. And yeah, we're definitely excited for our 25th year, which is, you know, for a print
Congratulations.
piece, that's a big deal. So we're definitely going to be celebrating with special design dinners, and just a bunch of cool stuff. So
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Hollie. Have an awesome day, and I'm sure we'll touch base soon.
absolutely. I'll talk to you soon, Chris. Thank you so much.